On September 14, 1996, writer and artist Kazuki Takahashi began work on the manga series Yu-Gi-Oh! In the Japanese Shonen Jump magazine. Translating to King of Games, the series was envisioned as an episodic horror story, focusing on protagonist Yugi Moto being possessed by a dark spirit to challenge his bullies to sinister versions of childhood games. In a story called The Cards with Teeth, Takahashi parodied popular card battle manga by having the characters play a fictional game called Magic and Wizards. Little did he know at the time, this parody game would quickly balloon into one of the most popular collectible card games on the planet. Magic and Wizards was played with extremely simple and intuitive rules. Takahashi explained that this was done because he felt the popular Magic the Gathering card game was too complicated. As such, Magic and Wizards only used two card types, monsters and spells. The game had taken Takahashi only a single night to design, and he had planned to drop it from the manga after 2 chapters. He didn't anticipate his readership falling in love with the game, calling Shonen Jump and requesting to see more of it. As the manga continued, the game evolved, eventually taking center stage in the plot. The English translations of the manga marked this turning point with a change in branding, with the new volume subtitled Duelist, shorthand for the terms of the players of the fictional game, now renamed to Duel Monsters. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga was going strong and even received an animated adaptation by Toei Animation in April 1998, but the physical card game had yet to emerge. In September of 1998, toy company Bandai released a limited run of booster packs, and after the license was bought by media giant Konami, limited runs of promotional cards would be released as well. But the true version of the game, as we know it today, was first released on February 4th, 1999 by Konami, in cooperation with Upper Deck Entertainment. The game would come to America on March 8, 2002, with the first booster set, Legend of the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Fast forward to today, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Has produced over 10,000 cards with a wide variety of effects and appearances. YouTube creator TheRJB0 sat down with me to talk about how that wide variety is a benefit to the game.
It's a game that I think fulfills the fantasy of the game in a way that no other game does, right? And that fantasy is so incredibly diverse. I mean, in the recent metagame, we have had everything from lightning spirits to giant machines to invading aliens to small forest creatures. And every single one of those has not only been good in some capacity, but they've had their own unique feeling to them that really fulfills on what you would want out of something like that. Anybody who has some kind of sci-fi or fantasy dream can find something in Yu-Gi-Oh! That not just looks like that or reads like that, but also plays like that.
But Yu-Gi-Oh!'s diversity of cards isn't the only thing that it has over its competitors. While Yu-Gi-Oh! Is far from the only trading card game to feature draft play, it has developed a unique reputation among players for its ability to find unique and bizarre combinations of cards. YouTube creator Hardleg Joe produces a series called the Chaos Draft Series, which highlights what he calls Playground Yu-Gi-Oh!, a version of the game focused on these crazy combinations. I asked him what set the game apart from its contemporaries, like Wizards of the Coast's game Magic the Gathering.
I remember I went through a thing where I tried to learn Magic and I bought bulk of that, and you cannot really combine bulk in Magic in the same way that you can combine bulk in Yu-Gi-Oh!
But the game still didn't sell itself. And the Toei anime, which had ended its run in October of 1998, had scarcely focused on the card game to begin with. A new anime, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, would be the thing to do it. The anime was produced by Studio Gallop and Nihon Ad Systems, or NAS, and would air on TV Tokyo, covering the manga starting from the introduction of the Duel Monsters game, making the card battle a central focus. First airing on April 18, 2000, the anime was immediately a hit. On May 8, 2001, the American dubbing company 4Kids Entertainment obtained the merchandising and TV rights for the anime within the US, striking a deal with Warner Bros. To begin airing the anime on Kids WB starting September 29, 2001, rebranding the title to simply Yu-Gi-Oh! 4Kids would also rewrite and edit many aspects of the original show in an attempt to suit US cultural norms. The card's artwork was simplified and dialogue was rewritten to include jokes and one-liners.
Am I supposed to be scared to attack?
Well, only if destroying an innocent soul concerns you.
Nah. As the president of a major corporation, I have to do that every day.
The 4Kids Entertainment dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Would prove to be immensely successful, with many fans fondly remembering the series from its iconic theme song, catchphrases, and performances from voice actors such as Dan Green and Eric Stewart.
Draw your last pathetic card so I can end this, Yugi.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba, but it does contain the unstoppable Exodia.
The influence of the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime cannot be overstated. For further context, I sat down with content creator Golden Nova Yu-Gi-Oh!, an expert on the anime and lore of the game.
I would say that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime has had an enormous cultural impact on the play space that I don't think we're ever going to see us move away from. I think the thing that has stayed with most people is that the anime's conceit is that it doesn't matter what cards you are playing, it matters how much you know those cards and how much you connect with them. And for better or for worse, so many people at so many events have internalized that mindset. If you've ever heard someone complain about being a meta sheep, I am 80% sure that's because they have a Six Samurai deck in their backpack that they've been playing since 2006. And anyone who does not follow the Yu-Gi-Oh! Code of playing like their soul deck is betraying the spirit of the game. And honestly, I can't blame them for thinking that, because that has been part of the marketing since its inception.
And those connections to a player's cards have been a major driving force for Yu-Gi-Oh! Creatively. Classic monsters like the Blue Eyes White Dragon and Dark Magician continue to get new support cards released decades after their first printing. But if you ask the RJB0, he'd say it's a strength.
It also is a game that's constantly changing, but retains a lot of the elements that made previous iterations fun. Like the time that I got back into the game in 2016 was because a deck that I loved in Mermail Atlanteans suddenly got a single piece of support that absolutely broke the deck wide open, and I got to play that deck competitively again, which is one that I had loved, but got me into a new competitive environment where I could lab out all of these combos and learn it all over again. And I think that state of constantly being in flux, but holding over a lot of those things that you know and love, so that there's always an avenue back into it, is part of what keeps me coming back.
And those traits, constant evolution and holding on to the classics, would become Yu-Gi-Oh's standout features as time went on. Yu-Gi-Oh loved to harken back to its origins in duel monsters, but more than any other anime of its type, it needed to evolve. In March 2004, the Yu-Gi-Oh manga would release its final chapter. The Duel Monsters anime would end in September that same year, but the story was far from complete. Rather than continuing the original story with its cast of characters, it was decided to create self-contained spin-offs, beginning with the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX anime, produced once again by Studio Gallop and NAS, and airing in Japan from October 6, 2004. Like Duel Monsters, GX would be dubbed in the West by 4Kids Entertainment. In a few years' time, GX would be succeeded by 5Ds, and the cycle of spin-offs would continue on roughly 3-year cycles. Each spin-off received its own manga tie-ins, typically with deviating stories told with the same characters. Each new series also began bringing new types of cards or summoning mechanics to the game. What had started as a game with only monsters and spells, made to be simple, started to get very complex. Not only had the initial game introduced trap cards and fusion monsters, each new generation would expand on the game's mechanics. Synchro monsters, Xyz monsters, pendulum summoning, link summoning. Before long, the game had spiraled out of hand, and that presented a problem, a massive barrier for entry.
We have a big problem in general with just getting people into the game, because again, it is so complicated. There's so many different summoning mechanics now, so many different kinds of cards that you can use, and getting people to learn all of that, especially if you're trying to jump right in and learn all of it at once, very difficult.
People seem to have a particular problem with pendulums.
It's one of those things where you're trying to teach someone how to play, and they're looking at the field and they're like, what do these arrows on these zones mean? You have to be like, don't worry about it, there are cards that do use them, but you won't be playing those most likely, and if you see them, just, I don't know, cry.
The complexity of the game has led Konami to make a variety of attempts to reintroduce the game to players, packaged in a simpler form. From 2016's mobile app Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links to the ongoing Speed Duel format, or even the reinvention of the game with Rush Duels. New methods to get players introduced to the game with less of the hassle have been ongoing concerns. In the meantime, the game has only gotten crazier, but something interesting happened in 2022. The release of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, an online game to play Yu-Gi-Oh! For free. The game got a lot of interest when it dropped for streamers and new players. Why? Well, it seemed the game's complexity came back around to help it as a spectator sport.
There's a lot of really wild out there effects in Yu-Gi-Oh! Things like Maxi that you control like 20 cards, or something like Rongo Nimiad, which is just like entirely invincible. Your opponent can't play the game if you summon it. And to a more casual player, those aren't a problem because they're really cool. They really like these big flashy effects that do a lot of stuff. And it only really becomes a problem when you try to take the game seriously and you're trying to compete, and it becomes a game of whoever wins the coin flip and gets their broken thing out first is the one that wins.
Watching these flashy effects in Master Duel became a lot of fun for the casual player. Things like this didn't happen in Magic or Pokemon. These games didn't have a set of 5 cards that instantly won you the duel if you drew them all together. The flashiness factor is what set Yu-Gi-Oh! Apart.
Yu-Gi-Oh! At the end of the day was designed off an anime, and to this day the anime continues, and they kind of have that design philosophy of, we need to make cards that would be cool to see someone play in a show. And even though it doesn't always work out like that, especially in the more competitive arena, sometimes it does. And it's those moments of excitement of anime showdown where you've got 100 life points and one card off the top makes all the difference, that really make the game worth playing.
On July 4th, 2022, Kazuki Takahashi passed away. Found in snorkeling gear off the coast of Nago City, it was later confirmed by an officer of the US Army that Takahashi had drowned while trying to rescue a mother and daughter from a riptide current. While the man had not been directly involved in the media giant spawned from his manga for many years, the community that had grown from it grieved his loss. For many, he inspired a lifelong love of gaming, birthed a bustling community, and had given them a way to make connections through play. Yu-Gi-Oh! Had been born from Takahashi's love of games, and the way they bring people together, and for countless fans of his work, he passed that down onto them. Yu-Gi-Oh! Remains a cultural juggernaut, with merchandise all over, many stores, 8 anime series, and a well-attended competitive events across the world. A game born from coincidence has become a hobby practiced by hundreds of thousands of players. Takahashi made his own feelings on the success of the game clear in an author's note in 1999. Quote, "This manga's been running for over 2 years now. Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards and video games and all sorts of things have been released, but stuck here sitting behind my desk, I can't watch people playing them. I wish I could see you guys enjoying them, but if you've made a friend through a shared interest in Yu-Gi-Oh!, then I'm happy that I made this manga. That's what brings me the most joy."